Hadur mentioned
Yes.
yesterday that there
Sorry.
is more to be said about this case.
What I wanted to say was simply this, that Hazrat Masih Islam has clearly laid down principles which will never fail in respect to discovering the authenticity and credibility of Hadith. He said that, first of all, the Holy Qur'an is clear and it has muhkamat, also mutashabihat. So as far as the muhkamat are concerned, they are the right judge. A hadith which stands counter to the teachings of muhkamat could not be the word of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because the muhkamat also stand guard over mutashabihat. Any meaning of mutashabihat which is counter or doubtful with regards to the clear teaching of muhkamat will has to be molded. Will have to be molded according to muhkamat. As long as under its sway is acceptable, as long as it's contrary is rejectable. So if this happens to the Quran itself, if the Holy Quran itself advises us to follow muhkamat essentially and to understand mutashabihat in accordance, and if you do not do that, then according to the Holy Quran, those who have disease in their heart, they will begin to twist mutashabihat. So all that is laid open in the Holy Quran. A hadith must also be put to the kusoti, but touchstone of the clear-cut teaching of the Holy Quran. Secondly, as you have already said, Hazrat Masih Maud said that the character of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallam in itself is like a living example, like sun. The light of sun is never put to doubt. It's clear and it's recognizable. The character of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallam as depicted in the Holy Quran is so clear that anything contradictory to that character will not be acceptable as true hadith. It's impossible. Third, Hazrat Masih said that there cannot be any contradiction in the word of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So there are many there are ahadith sahiyah, so many, but all of them do not confirm with each other. So if we prove definitely that some ahadith belonging to the category of sahih are contrary to some other ahadith, so we can't accept that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had a split personality and he was divided in the middle regarding this and that. It's impossible. It's something which simply cannot be entertained. So that means either our understanding of that hadith is wrong, or something else has happened. Somebody else has concocted that hadith. So first of all, Hazrat Masih Islam laid great stress on trying to compromise apparently contradictory hadith to the verses which are very clear, bayanat. If you go deeper and understand the meaning, then the thing will become very clear, no problem will be left. Again, the same should be done with regard to hadith. If one hadith seems to be contradictory to the other, is resolved by deeper understanding of the text of the hadith, then it should not be rejected, because it's a word of wisdom. But when there is no way out, you can't do anything, then that hadith has to be rejected as something which simply either was concocted by others or misunderstood by the reporters. Now, remember this thing. This is a very important aspect. Ahadith, after all, were collected after 100 years or so and then on. they were reported through the word of mouth to the children or others, reported further on, and generation after generation they were reported. We know that in the living history of our memory, many things which were reported 20 years ago become confused. And when you reach the other end of that version, people start reporting from Germany, this is what you said or somebody said. And from England, some people stand up, no, this is not what you said. This is what you said. At another place, some other reporter stands up. So this is the worth of the entire human memory. That is why the Quran was committed to writing. And memory was not entirely trusted. So we must give margin of human error. So Hadith would anyway stand second to the Quran, never equal. It will never be made judge of the Quran. Quran will always remain the judge of Hadith. This is the final verdict of Hazrat Masih Maud Islam. Yes.
Yes, sir.
There are other problems related to Hadith which also have to be now explained. Many a time the Hadith speaks of something to happen in the not literally but metaphorically. You understand this point? Now, if it is taken as literally, then people distort the message. There is no fault of Hadith. Hadith is Sahih, but the understanding is not Sahih. So that also creates complications and contradictions. Sometimes historical contradictions. For instance, in the Hadith where Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes to Jerusalem, he sees the mosque there and leaves the prayer. You remember that Hadith?
Yes, in Isra.
During the Isra.
Yes.
The Holy Qur'an mentions it. But where was the mosque there? None. You see, the whole temple of Solomon was in rubbles and ruins. And in fact, it had become a place where people threw their refuse, and all the city used as a dumping house. But Rasulullah saw a mosque, and that was Masjid Aqsa. The Holy Quran mentions it. From Masjid Haram to Masjid Aqsa. So this is not only the Hadith but also in the Quran. So if the Quran and Hadith both are taken to be literally, then there will be a great confusion caused. Every historian knows, and all Muslim scholars also should know, and they perhaps know, that this was conquered, that Palestine was conquered at the time of Hazrat Umar radiyallahu ta'ala. And then it was Malik bin Marwan, under whose rule this rubble was cleared and a mosque was built there. So how could that be the Masjid Aqsa? So the meaning here should be understood, and then there will be no contradiction left. Aqsa means far off place. And you can only understand the word Aqsa in relation to what happened there. All the souls of all the prophets had gathered who said their prayer behind Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if they were dead prophets, and they were dead prophets, how could they return bodily and physically to that mosque which was non-existent? And according to some traditions, there were 124,000 prophets of Allah. So was that mosque, even which was built later on, capable of having all these prophets together? So Aqsa means far off. It means either a mosque which will be built in future among Akhareen. So that is why it's called Aqsa. Where is a Rasul Uqatat, where the representative of Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would lead people from all nations and all the prophets of Allah who have left some followers behind will follow that perfect slave of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah representing him. Then the prophecy of the Quran will be fulfilled, then that Aqsa will be created, where practically people from all the followers of all the prophets and all religions will be gathered under one flag. They use Deen kullihi. So if you read the Quran and interrelate the Quranic verses and know the history and apply the words of the Quran to historical facts which are undeniable, if you know the deeper sense of Quranic text, and relate ahadith to those texts in that underlying sense, things not only begin understandable, they become so beautiful, Then everything becomes understandable, and then later on they are proved to be right. Obviously, this was a prophecy. A great prophecy, that, O Prophet of Allah, all prophets are going to follow you. This is the meaning you are leading them. Souls do not return to earth, and they do not take the form of human beings, walking about. They already had become souls and they were with Allah. Haramun ala qaryatin ahlaknaha annaha ilayhim la yarji'un. Ilaha la yarji'un. This is the verdict of the Quran. So that Masjid Aqsa could not be a material Masjid Aqsa. And there was no Masjid Aqsa as such. A similar example is that of Manaratul Masih, Al-Manaratul Bayda in the Dimashq, Sharqiya Dimashq. There was no Manaratul Bayda, Sharqiya Dimashq at the time when Muhammad Rasulullah was saying this. Dimashq was not yet conquered. It had not become Muslim. There were all Christians there, or others. So that Manara had to be some other symbol of something. And people still insist that there has to be some Manara, the Sharqiya Dimashq, where he will descend. And there are other traditions which speak of the Manara being ladderless, no staircase for that Manara. So there are traditions which say that Maulvis or people, when they see Jesus Christ descend on that Manara, they would run for the ladders and provide those ladders for Jesus Christ to get down from the Manara. So if you take all these things literally, where would be the sense left? Imagine Jesus Christ descending from fourth heaven without hurting himself.
We need ladders now.
Yes. Fourth heaven he descended, whole and solemn, and was then put on the Manara for where he couldn't reach the earth. They do not understand because they do not contemplate the meaning. They think these are the words of some man like themselves. They are words of Allah and the words of the Holy Prophet. Because, as I said, مَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. Now when you understand, then suddenly a most beautiful meaning appears, which is worthy of being called the word of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah. Manarat al-Bayda means, Bayda is a symbol of truth and light. And Manara is the status of that truth at high place, where you can view it from different places, where the light can spread. So, whenever a messenger of Allah comes, whenever somebody from God comes, he appears from high on high. And if people have eyes and vision, they can recognize him and benefit from him. But people also have to do something. If they do not apply the ladders of their attitude and acceptance, he will remain as far away. He will be as good on the minaret, hanging on the minaret, as he was in the heavens. They will not be able to benefit from him. So you have to apply the letters of your attitude. Accept him. Say, come. Like they say, you're on our eyes. In Urdu, to the guest whom you most welcome, they say, you walk on our eyes. Our eyes are spread on the path. This is the meaning of that hadith. When he comes, God will send him, but still you will not be able to benefit from him. He will be as far away as he was. You have to do something. You have to reach him and make him descend to your hearts. So if you interpret this hadith, there is nothing illogical left in that. So that is what I mean. Hazrat Masih not only demonstrated this, and claimed this to be the only right way of treating a hadith with apparent contradictions between themselves, between the history, acceptable history to the whole mankind. Then don't reject them as meaningless hadith. Delve deeper and you will find a wealth of treasure, a treasure of meaning. So this is the example you better explain.
Yes, Hadhrat, I just want to give a remark. There is a big alim, mullah, called Abu Raya in Egypt.
Yes.
And he wrote a book 30, 40 years ago, and all the ulama were against him. He criticized Al-Bukhari and all these books and said that the hadith is full of nonsense. And he gave examples. Some of them are these hadiths. He said how this is coming from heaven, this Isa, and how this is to be a hadith related, because he did not look this.
That is
way.
it.
Yeah.
That is what Masih did for Islam. Great favor. Instead of turning people to atheism, those who thought and who can think, these explanations brought them back to Islam and Rasulullah with such great power and force that the whole belief in Islam and Muhammad Rasulullah was revived. I'll give another example of that after this is finished. I give another very interesting example of how these ulama do such grave injustice to the word of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah by insisting on their literal meaning. That is the great struggle between us and them. I quote a few examples, then you will understand how important it is for one to be enlightened by Allah so that he can understand the word of one who is enlightened by Allah. Without that you can't. One example came to light once when Hazrat Khalifatul Masih radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu was Hakim Nuruddin then. He was not yet Khalifatul Masih Awwal. He was traveling in a train when somebody was suited, booted and well-to-do person. He was sitting there, and he was later on discovered to be a Nawab, a prince of a stately family. So he sat just opposite to him, and this man, when he looked at Hazrat Khalifatul Masih looking like a Maulvi, he turned with loathsomeness, loathing. Aversion and hatred was so clearly written on his face. He just turned his back. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, of course he realized it. Very mildly and politely and humbly he said, have I offended you in any way? I didn't mean to, please. Why have you turned away? Why do you hate me so much? So the way he approached, he appealed to him. And he turned back and said, look here, I'll tell you. You are a mullah, obviously. I hate all mullahs. He said, why? What have they done to you? He said, I'll tell you my story and then you'll realize what they had done to me. He said, I was a son of a great prince, and my father was very religious. He insisted that despite my being educated in convent school, all the best Christian education which is available, he said you must also go to the mosque and learn religion from the mullah. So in obedience to my father I did so. There he said one morning, our mullah told us that, do you know the source of river Nile, where it is, where does it come from? So I said, he said something, he didn't know. Of course, from somewhere, some mountains. He said, you don't know, stupid boy. It is coming from the moon. You see, when you look at the moon, there are some mountainous, regions, vaguely appearing. They are the mountains of the moon, and from the moon mountain, the river Nile is descending. He had some common sense, and he was educated in a Christian modern school. He said, Maulvi Sahib, what do you mean? What is this trash? It's coming from moon, this river Nile? He said, yes, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said it. And if you say no, I'll kick you out. You're kafir and run away and never enter this mosque again. So he said, I ran away from the mosque, never to enter any mosque afterwards. He said, I reacted so powerfully that I became a Christian. And remained a Christian till I grew old. Not old but young, quite some to adult age. One day he said, I was reading a book written by a Christian priest who had traveled East Africa, and he was writing his experiences of East Africa and interesting things we discovered. Incidentally, it was not incidental because it was designed by Allah, but he says incidentally this priest discovered that the source of Nile is in Uganda, in the southern part of Uganda, and the mountain where it comes from is Jabalul Qamar, mountain of the moon. So when he read Jabalul Qamar, suddenly he was awakened. God, what have I done? This hadith should have led me to a greater faith in Holy Master Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, not to make me run away from him. There and then I did istighfar and said, no, never shall I leave this Holy Master again. He was enlightened, he was told by Allah things which even the geographists of the present age had to discover after long labor and investigation. And 1400 years or 13 from that time, 1300 years ago, Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was told the name of that mountain, which was Jabalul Tariq. No, I'm sorry, Jabalul Qamar. Jabalul Qamar. So he said, a mullah made me a Christian, and a Christian made me a Muslim. So ever since I vowed never to set my eyes on mullahs. So Khalifatul Masih then spoke to him, and this man became a very devout Ahmadi ultimately. Because when he read Hazrat Masih literature, he found exactly the same compatibility with the universal truth as we know the Hadith and the Quran. But if you delve deeper into the meaning, only then you discover this compatibility, not otherwise.
Yes.
He was the author of a book. He read a book.
I know this man, Stanley something, who discovered...
No, what I mean to say, he
read a book.
Read the book.
Oh,
it was not his teacher who told him.
Not his teacher,
but he read. Now, talking of the moon, there is another very interesting hadith, which is also a Sahih hadith, Sahih, from Mishkat. I've quoted it. मिशकात किताबुल फितन, ये सही है हदीस पे लिखा हुआ है इस पे? नहीं, 6 में तो शामिल है ना? नहीं, I'm sorry, मगर वो लेती है किताब उसमें से. मिशकात collects from different, even from Bahaki. But this is not a misal of Sahih. Where the Jal is mentioned, Musnad Ahmad is Sahih. You see, the Jal is mentioned in Muslim, Kitab al-Fitan, in Musnad Ahmad bin Hanbal, and also other Kutub-e-Sahiyya. So all the hadiths of the Jal are not found in Kutub, but many are found. And they speak of various things. One of the ahadith of the traditions speaks of moon on the forehead of the donkey which the jar will ride. There will be a moon. And there would be the distance between the two ears would be 70 bah, which is 105 yards. And many ahadith speak of his long strides and fast movement, announcement about his departure, and he will announce that he's about to, so come whoever wants to sit in. Tafsir Dur-e-Manshur has mentioned this, Kanzul Amal has mentioned this, and so on. So we have got a collection of ahadith which revolve around ahadith-e-sahiyya and speak of the detail of the same thing. Altogether, when you consider the Dajjal and his donkey, both are mentioned definitely as such in ahadith-e-sahiyya. Some details are given there, some are not. But I am drawing your attention to some of the details found in ahadith relating to the Dajjal. How would the mullah interpret them? One hadith says there will be a moon on the forehead, and the other hadith says the distance between his two ears will be 105 yards. So would they have us believe that according to Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, moon was only that short? That within the span of his forehead, the moon would set in and would be fixed there. And again, he would eat fire. And the donkey would be so broad and so long, I mean, a big, huge thing, and people will enter his belly from the sides, and inside will be lighted. All these are various ahadith regarding the Dajjal, because he will be the donkey of the Dajjal. You recognize the rider from the mount he rides. That is the style of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So there are other very interesting things. This donkey will be able to swim across oceans and will carry food loads like mountains from the Dajjal to those people who would submit to his authority and accept him as their Lord, as their provider. Those who deny him, food will not go towards, even if they die of hunger. And this donkey will not sink. First of all, donkey only 105, now it's a small donkey, 105 yards broad and some long. How could he carry mountains of wheat? And again, the same donkey is told by Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to be able to jump across the span of the earth. 1 foot would be in the east and 1 foot would be in the west. Obviously, it's a large, huge jump, taking off from here and landing in the west. All these things, according to the mullahs, are literal. They would not permit us to read the message within. They say, you accept it as it is, or you become kafir. There is no third option. So if this is their attitude, they will turn the whole thinking world into kuffar. And what would be left within the Islam? Non-thinking people. Poor Islam, It will be filled with dunces, and people like brains of donkeys. And those who think, they will have to leave Islam because of this mullah's foolish attitude, not because of the hadith. No, Hazrat Masih interpreted them, and suddenly a huge wealth of meaning appeared. which brought the thinking men even closer than before to Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and they bowed their heads to him as the greatest prophet on earth. Hazrat Masih Maud said, it is a language of metaphor. Donkey is an animal which is used both for transport of heavy loads and for riding as well. So it stands halfway between everything, and is a very tough animal. But Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told you that this is not an animal I am talking about. It is a machine which will be eating fire. So all the modes of travel which are fire driven are mentioned in this metaphor of a donkey. He said once you know the key, then everything is resolved. Then when he says there will be manazil for his journeys, he will stop at every different manzil, and new passengers will get into that donkey, and he will announce, I'm about to leave, whoever wants to come and sit, and then it will leave. And the journey will be so fast on land that a journey of months will be traveled in hours. So when you hear the whistle of train, and when you hear the announcement, the train is ready to depart for Cairo or for this place or that place, why don't you ever think of that great tradition of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? You see the donkey of Dajjal, which was invented by Dajjal, and you recognize that Dajjal as well, the reference to this donkey. All the new modes of travel eat fire, and they are referred to by the scientists as fire-driven modes of travel, fire-driven machines. They are all fire-driven. And the same fire-driven things are seen in the form of great ships like mountains. Like Jibal, the Holy Qur'an itself says. And they're all fire-driven nowadays. And they carry load of wheat by way of aid from America. They used to carry, to other poor people, only those who accepted them as their lords, not to others. So didn't they say the truth of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam being reflected in every ship which was loaded with wheat traveling from the west to the east to the poor countries? And then, according to Hazrat Islam, when this explanation became clear, we worked it out, and we suddenly realized that the aeroplane was also mentioned, in fact, because there are two references. Number one, this donkey would take off from the east and land in the west, because 1 foot in the east, second in the west, means this. And also Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned he will fly over the cloud line, above the cloud line.
His head above the
cloud line.
Yes.
So the planes, take off and go above the cloud line, and then start journeying fast. And when you connect this with the Holy Qur'an, وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْحُبُكِ suddenly appears before you. And when you see a sky, any time in the morning or evening in the west, you always see roads made by jets, the two jets, leaving beautiful roads behind. So this is the Dajjal, which is also, and the Gashar Dajjal, which is also mentioned in the Holy Quran and has been explained in Hadith. So that is the meaning of compromise and deep connection between Quran and Hadith. And the great prophecy of Dajjal suddenly becomes understandable. Whoever invented these things, that will be the Dajjal, the owner, the master of these modes of travel. And it would be through this fast mode of travel that it would conquer the whole world. That's exactly what has happened. And they still don't see. What can we do about it?
And the which
Please. See all the lights
in
the front of these Khare Dajjal, fire-driven cars around.
No.
And from distance look like moon.
Yes.
He indicates the time is over now. So inshallah we'll continue this tomorrow.
Inshallah.
We are getting here tomorrow, won't we?
Inshallah.